The Shining is directed by the legendary Stanley Kubrick, and it's based on the book by Stephen King.
This movie stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, Danny Lloyd, and Scatman Crothers. I've been wanting to review this movie for a while now because I saw this movie maybe like a few months ago for the first time. And honestly, this movie is probably my favorite horror movie of all time. Just so you know, we're gonna try to talk really quick. Hopefully it comes out that way.
Yeah, because I mean, we know that everybody and their mothers talk about this movie. So there's no point in talking about things that everybody's already talking about.
Yeah, there's nothing that hasn't been said about this movie. I just want to talk about it because it's like I love it so much. It's my favorite horror movie of all time. And so we'll just go ahead and start this off because tomorrow, on Friday is whenever Dr. Sleep comes out. We just want to have this out before we have that review out. So hopefully we'll have that review up by Friday morning. We'll have this one up by whenever you see it. So we're going to talk about it for a little bit.
And first of all, I do want to mention that we did get this Blu-ray signed, convention that we went to last month, signed by Danny Lloyd, the guy who played the kid in this movie, Danny. So it's his signature right there.
And there's a lot of things to love about The Shining, but I think one thing that maybe some people may not like to touch on, because it's a little touchy subject, is that horror movies in the 80s, although a lot of them good, a lot of them really good, all of them have their moments of being dated. All of them have their cheesiness, all of them have their moments of kind of not being having that timeless feel. Like most of them are timeless to a certain extent, but all of them have these little moments where it's like, it's a little cheesy, you know? But to me, The Shining is 100% timeless. Probably the most timeless movie, the most timeless horror movie of the 80s, because there's not a single part of this movie that I felt was cheesy whatsoever or over the top at all.
Yeah, especially because like the 80s was when you got like a whole bunch of the slasher movies, the iconic slasher movies that we still have nowadays, like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. And while those movies that still are great, they do have a sense of cheesiness to them, a vibe of cheesiness in some parts of those movies. But The Shining, like you said, just overall, there's not anything about it that I feel was cheesy.
Yeah.
It all had a sense of creepiness, like legit creepiness to it.
And I really feel like this is one of the very few horror movies of that decade, really, that really almost can't be topped. You know, I feel like some slasher movies of that decade, and of course they're of their time, they're fantastic and they're still good today, but I feel like they do have the possibility of being topped. This movie I don't, because this movie to me is absolutely perfect. One of the best things about this movie is there's no jump scares whatsoever, but this movie, Stanley Kubrick really knew what to do with this movie. He knew the right people to cast, he knew what to do with these actors in order to make this movie up to the level of what it became.
Yeah, and honestly, like the creepiest thing about this movie, there's so many iconic moments in this movie, and like the creepiest part of the movie for me was one that I didn't even know about before watching it, because this movie has so many iconic scenes that there's so many things that you can talk about, that the one part that was the creepiest for me was one that I didn't even know was in it, and that was the bathtub scene. And that legit like scarred me for like the next few days, because of how creepy it was.
And this movie, if you'll notice a lot, is that this movie really inspires so many horror movies after it. Yeah. You know, you'll see a lot of movies today that they kind of just like, okay, this kind of feels not like it doesn't completely feel like it, but there's certain scenes you can tell that were completely inspired by the cinematography of The Shining, because The Shining has really specific and really well done cinematography that really there's no way to go around showing us without telling us that it was inspired by this film.
Yeah, and it inspired Ready Player One.
Yeah, exactly.
The little sequence there. And going back to Stanley Kubrick, this movie just shows the amount of perfection that he had in all of his movies. Because I've read that a lot of takes in this movie, he filmed literally over and over and over again so that he could get the perfect take. Especially the scene where Jack Nicholson is following Shelley Duvall up the stairs and he's going like completely insane. I read that they shot that scene like so many times that even the actors were getting a little crazy themselves, and you can actually tell in the movie.
And I guess I don't want to leave this review without talking about just the acting of this film, because the acting in this film is phenomenal. It's probably some of the best acting in ever, especially from Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. Fantastic. You know, Jack Nicholson, really, there's no Jack Nicholson there once you get past a certain point. You know,
Right.
he just becomes creepy himself. There is films of Jack Nicholson behind the scenes of this movie doing the scene when he's swinging the axe at the door, and it just comes off as creepy.
Whenever me and my sister showed one of our friends, I guess he didn't know who Jack Nicholson was, and like we were in the middle of watching The Shining, and like our friend was like, this guy's giving me really big Joker vibes. I was like, well, he did play the Joker, but that's just shows you the level of creepiness that Jack Nicholson pulled off in this movie.
Another thing to talk about this movie is Stephen King's opinion on this film. Stephen King hates this movie. If nobody knows that already, Stephen King absolutely hates The Shining. And if you're wondering why, it's because it really does go off the book. Like, well, it goes off the source material a decent amount, you know. And so that's where Stephen King really hates this movie a lot. He hates it so much he actually made a Shining remake of his own. It's known to be terrible. I actually saw it myself. It's not that good.
Right.
Yeah, but
I haven't seen it yet, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's one thing I'll also say. Someone like, I don't know if you ever watched Chris Stuckman. Chris Stuckman brought up a point of like, this new movie coming out, Dr. Sleep, it's kind of a scary movie for the director and the writer themselves.
Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, because he made a good point of, he had to make a movie that made both the fans of Stephen King, the hardcore fans of Stephen King and the Shining book, and he had to please them, and he has to please the fans of the Shining movie.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, so you're planning a movie that has to be liked by both of these fans that really pretty much have differing views.
Yeah, and like you said, the Shining movie, the Stanley Kubrick movie, did have a lot of liberties to it and a lot of changes to it. So it's kind of hard how you're gonna like, because Doctor Sleep is a sequel, but you have to be a sequel to like two different things, kind of.
Yeah. And thankfully, I have heard this movie is actually pretty good. Some people say it's okay, so I'm really looking forward to see Doctor Sleep tomorrow. Well, guys, overall, I think we all know here everything about The Shining and everything that everybody's ever said about this movie. And, you know, this review almost seems kind of useless to have, but I just wanted to talk about it really bad because it's a fantastic movie, perfect. There's really not that much more to say about it other than the fact that it's absolutely a perfect horror movie and just a perfect movie in general. We are gonna say that The Shining is 100% awesome.
Oh my God! Wow!
Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, comment, let us know what you thought about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Also, tell us if you saw it. Let us know what you thought about Stephen King's The Shining. And if you've seen it already, maybe like at a pre-screening, let us know what you thought about Dr. Sleep as well.
And don't forget to follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2 Awesome Men.
And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see us later.